Today we're going to be chatting all about Calvalax. Hey, welcome, I'm LeilaFox. Today's lore story video is all about Calvalax. Calvalax was recently added to the Raid Shadow Legends game from September 2021 as a champion creation contest winner. So right here, you're gonna see on the left was the submitted art for Calvalax, and on the right was actually what the 3D model ended up looking like when he was added to the game. And I'm sure many will agree when they see Calvalax's full model in the game that they did a wonderful job. He does look like he has the base style of Hegemon, but they did a fantastic job of just making him look like this Night Revenant undead king. And with his skills, we see that his skills involve poisons. You know, he ends up placing extra poisons. He has an AoE poison. He also is a speed lead in all battles. So he ended up being a really interesting and pretty cool champ that was added into the game. Now, how does the story for Calvalax fit in with the Night Revenants? First, let's take a look at the faction lore. Disciples of the Cleth Death Cult, the Night Revenants see themselves as vessels of the spirit of the dead of their order. They raid indiscriminately to capture slaves, to support themselves, and as ritual sacrifices. Upon initiation, devotees surrender their bodies to the spirits of dark warriors. Let's check out the story for Calvalax from the Tolarian Lore Book of Champions.
Once, a long time ago, in the lands of Karak that yet knew no king, there lived a great warrior by the name of Kavalax. He was no scion of an ancient bloodline, but it was an age where one's nobility was measured less by a long list of eminent ancestors and more by the number of warriors under their banner. Of those, Calvalax had no shortage. Blessed with strength and cunning alike, he knew no equal on the field of battle and led countless campaigns against the orc tribes that populated the plains of Arnok. He razed their crude settlements and put anyone who dared resist him to the sword. Within a decade, a vast swath of land had been liberated from savages, and the budding city bestowed a duke's diadem upon Calvalax, to whom they owed their newfound prosperity. Thus his rule begun, in blood and fire and ruthless conquest. Many a bold challenger sought to take the duchy from Calvalax, only to find untimely death, while his fame, or infamy, grew. And the more foes perished by Calvalax's blade, the more convinced he became of his immortality. But hubris is often deadlier than even the cruelest of monsters. Doom did not take the shape of an invading army or a raging dragon. It was a disease that many sages maintain was divine punishment for Calvalax's arrogance, or an ancient curse he had unwittingly invoked. The plague swept Arnok like a tidal wave. Even Calvalax himself could not escape the unseen miasma of decay. He fell ill and weakened by the day, unable to fight this unseen enemy as he had fought those who challenged his rule. Desperate, he prayed for salvation and vowed to pay any price, no matter how steep. And a dark, ancient force heard his prayers. A stranger arrived to Arnok that fortnight, an old man wrapped in black robes and shadow. He walked the streets, unafraid of the plague, and arrived at Kavalax's castle to offer a solution to the doom that threatened the city. All he asked in return was the Duke's willing cooperation and a sacrifice of innocent blood. By then, the citizens of Arnok were as desperate as their ruler and eagerly followed the prophet's instructions. Dozens were brought to the altar like sheep and slain, while Kavalax, clad in armor with full regalia, bore witness. Then, as the sacrificial chalice overflowed with blood, ripples of arcane power tore through the city. Chronicles describe clouds of plague mist being swept by hurricane wind and carried towards the castle, where the mad prophet channeled him into Calvalax's body and sealed all of the city's woes within. What became of the Duke next, none can say. Some say he perished that day. Others maintain that it was all a ploy by the cult of Cleth, the Night Revenant, and Calvalax had fallen into their thrall. One thing is certain, the legend of a nightmare knight, clad in ancient armor that oozes with pestilence, emerged soon after, and very few are those who witnessed that walking horror and lived to tell the tale.
All right, wow. So that was the story for Calvalax, and I'm not sure what you were expecting, but I have to say, I thought this story really fit in with the Halloween holiday season that is almost upon us, because there really was some very creepy vibes to it. So first thing, starting out with Calvalax, we have him that he's a very strong warrior. He led many battles, built himself up an army, and unfortunately, that made him start to think that he was immortal. He started to think he was more than human. And then this story has an interesting turn of events. What is that ends up coming to his demise? It ends up being a plague. It ends up being disease, something that you can't see. And how do you fight something that you can't see and you can't touch? The story dives into this dark stranger that ends up finding him, coming to the village, and making this horrible pact with him about sacrifices as a way to get rid of the plague. And so what ends up happening? They agree that this is okay. Calvalax and everybody in his village, they're tired of the plague and they see this as their only way out. I'm a really big World of Warcraft fan, and this gave me very much almost Arthas vibes. Anyone that's familiar with the Arthas and Lich King, it almost gave me very similar storyline to that, where they go in and they want to wipe out the plague and those that are infected by it, but instead, so this stranger ends up channeling all this evil, all this disease, places it inside Kavalax. He ends up becoming a night revenant. And what I think is really interesting about this whole story is when we look at his character design, we see all of this black, we see all this green, we see all this poison. And I think that ties in really, really nicely again with his abilities. And the fact that all of his abilities deal with poisons. It's the plague, it's the disease, it's all of that seeping out of him. So it's a really interesting way to tie in the abilities and his design, like his character design in the game, along with the story. I would love to know what you think about this story for Kavalax. Make sure you leave me some comments down below. Is this the kind of story you were thinking for a champ like this? And what do you think? Do you also think it fits in really nice with the holiday season, with Halloween coming up? Let me know in the comments. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, check out some more videos up here in the playlist on the top right.